close a complex B2B deal right now, listen to this. There's a figure that, honestly, it should make you rethink everything about how you spend your time in sales. A major Gartner study found that the buying committees you're trying to win over, they spend only 17% of their entire buying journey actually talking to potential vendors. That means talking to you or, your competitors. Just 17%.
17% sounds low, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that number, well, it's not just frustrating. It's a critical constraint. It basically dictates every move you make.
So where does the other 83% of their time go? Because that's a lot of time not spent with sales folks.
Yeah, exactly. And the forces map it out pretty clearly. About 27% goes into online research, Googling, reading reviews, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Then another 18% is spent on offline research. Think peer recommendations, reference calls, tapping into existing relationships they trust.
Right, the word of mouth stuff.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And maybe the most surprising chunk, a huge 22% is spent just in internal meetings, the buying committee talking amongst themselves.
Wow. So that's the reality check. You're essentially fighting for scraps of time, and that tiny 17% slice, it gets split across all the vendors they're even considering.
Which means every second counts. If you only get, say, 10 minutes, those 10 minutes have to be absolutely spot on.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We're going digging into efficiency. We're going to look at the standard ways people prospect, compare them against the actual data, and figure out the single strategy that's proven to deliver up to 5x higher win rates.
Yeah, we'll break down the usual suspects, top-down selling, bottom-up, the champion method. We'll look at the pros and cons. But really, we're building towards the strategy the data supports for beating this time crunch, multi-threading.
Okay, multi-threading.
Yeah.
Got it. But before we get into the tactics, we probably need to understand the battlefield itself, right? The people involved.
You can't plan your approach until you know who you're approaching. We need to talk about the decision-making unit, or DMU.
Right, the DMU. Because in B2B, it's almost never just one person signing the check.
You got it. And the data really hammers this home. A 2020 study showed that 65% of B2B buying committees have 4 or more people involved. 65%.
4 or more.
And if you look back a bit further, there was a really foundational study by the Corporate Executive Board, the CEB, back in 2015. They found the average committee size was 5.4 members.
5.4 members? That just sounds unwieldy, especially if you only get that 17% of their time. If it's that complex, why isn't the first move just, find the one person with the budget and ignore everyone else?
That's a great question. And that CEB study actually had a warning tied to that average number. It explains why you can't just bypass the group.
Oh, what was the warning?
They found that the chance of actually winning the deal dropped significantly once the committee hits 6 or more members. So if you try to ignore the committee, you basically create dissent. And dissent just leads to deals stalling out, inertia.
Okay, so you have to play the game, appeal to the committee, which means understanding who's in the committee, the different roles.
Exactly. And crucially, understanding what each role actually cares about. This brings us to a really important distinction. Extrinsic versus intrinsic requirements.
Extrinsic versus intrinsic. Let's nail those down. What are extrinsic requirements?
Okay, so extrinsic requirements are the objective things, measurable. Tactical details like features, integration capabilities, can the software connect to our CRM, or price, how much does it cost? Concrete stuff you can compare on a spreadsheet.
Got it. The what and how much. So intrinsic requirements.
Intrinsic is about the why, the strategic stuff, high-level business outcomes. Why does this investment actually matter for the company's future?
Okay.
Like, this needs to boost our sales velocity by 15% this quarter. Or, how does this solution cut our compliance risk in half? It's about the big picture benefit, the business impact, not just the feature list.
That distinction makes the roles much clearer. Let's walk through them. First up, the initiator.
Yeah, that's simply the person who first flags the problem or identifies the need, the one who says, hey, we should look into fixing this.
Okay. Then you have the buyers, procurement folks, maybe an economic buyer.
Exactly. These are the process guardians. Their world revolves around gathering requirements, writing the RFPs, RFIs, negotiating terms. They are laser focused on those extrinsic requirements and making sure the process is fair and documented. Think about things like IGCE in government deals, independent government cost estimates. That shows the level of detail they manage.
Right, very process driven. Okay, then the decision makers. The executive buyer may be a source selection authority?
Yep. These are usually higher up, they hold the purse strings, final budget control, and they care almost entirely about the intrinsic requirements, the strategic wins, the business outcomes. What impact will this have?
And this is where influence comes in.
Massively. You've got general influencers, anyone who can sway opinions, and then the really key ones, the champions, sometimes called executive sponsors or mobilizers.
These are the people actively rooting for you.
Exactly. Your inside advocate, someone who specifically favors your solution and is willing to push for it internally. They're golden.
Okay. And finally, the users, the people who actually have to, well, use the thing day to day.
Yep, their perspective matters too, especially for adoption later on.
All right, so we know who's likely around the table. We know the clock is ticking mercilessly on that 17% engagement window. How do companies typically try to get their foot in the door? What are the classic approaches?
Well, there are basically three foundational tactics people try. They kind of represent different philosophies about whether you prioritize getting authority or respecting the existing procedure.
Okay, let's start with top-down selling, sometimes called above the line, targeting the decision maker first. What's the thinking there?
The argument is that going straight to the top gives you immediate insight into the crucial intrinsic requirements. The executive thinks strategically, right?
Right, the big picture.
Plus, it gives you authority. If the CEO introduces you enthusiastically, doors suddenly open with the rest of the committee. And, maybe most importantly, they control the budget. They can often find or reallocate funds, cutting through red tape.
Makes sense. But what's the catch if you go too hard at the top?
The big risk is trampling on the process. If you sidestep established procurement rules, you can instantly tick off the buyers, the folks whose job it is, to ensure fairness and follow procedure.
And they can subtly kill the deal later.
Totally.
Right.
It might be a quiet veto. They just slow walk things or maybe introduce new requirements later that conveniently favor a competitor. It's a political minefield sometimes.
Yeah, you definitely can't afford that kind of misstep with only 17% of their time. Okay, so that leads to the opposite approach. Bottom-up selling, hitting up the buyers or maybe the users first.
Right. This approach is all about respecting the procedure and ethics. You're showing the buyers you value their role, giving them the discretion to manage things fairly. It avoids any appearance of trying to improperly influence things.
Especially important where rules are strict, like government contracts.
Exactly. You don't want to get a decision maker in trouble or force them to recuse themselves because you approached them the wrong way too early.
But the downside seems obvious if you only talk to users or procurement.
Yeah, the major drawback is authority, or lack thereof. Users and buyers typically can't unlock strategic budget or really speed up the deal. You might win on features, you might follow the process perfectly, but you could still lose because you never got buy-in for the strategic value or budget needed.
Okay, top down, bottom up.
Yeah. What's the third classic tactic?
Champion selling. This is where you focus on cultivating that trusted insider, that ultimate influencer we mentioned.
We've all tried this, right?
Yeah.
Find that one person who loves you and hope they can carry the water.
And when it works, it's powerful. A well-placed champion can literally shape the requirements, both extrinsic and intrinsic. Sometimes they're the ones actually writing the spec sheet, tilted in your favor.
And they fight for you in those internal meetings you can't get into.
Absolutely. They can provide that crucial final decision influence, making persuasive arguments when the committee is deliberating.
Sounds great, until you get that email. The "my champion just resigned" email that torpedoes the deal. We've all been there. That's the Achilles heel. It's concentration risk. If that one champion leaves, or maybe just loses some internal political clout, your whole deal is suddenly hanging by a thread. You basically bet your entire 17% engagement strategy on one person's influence.
Okay, so top-down risks ticking off process people, bottom-up lacks clout, and champion selling is risky. Where does the actual data tell us to focus? Which approach maximizes that scarce time and minimizes these risks?
This is where it gets really interesting. We look at the hard evidence. There's a great analysis from UserGems. They looked at over 5,000 actual B2B SaaS deals.
5,000 deals. Okay, what did they find?
The findings were pretty definitive. The winner, the standalone strategy that consistently crushes the others, is multi-threading.
Multi-threading, which, just to be clear, means what exactly?
It means engaging multiple stakeholders simultaneously, across different roles, different departments sometimes. It's about not just focusing on one person, whether it's the decision maker, the buyer, or even just one champion. It's about building relationships broadly.
Okay, covering your bases across the DMU?
Exactly. It's about holistic coverage. And the numbers show why it's so critical. Multi-threading delivered 5x higher win rates.
5 times. That's huge.
And not only that, the deals themselves were 57% bigger on average.
Wow. Okay, 5x win rates, 57% bigger deals. Why? What's the mechanism? It sounds like more work connecting with more people.
It is more work up front, but it's about risk insulation. Think about those veto points we talked about. If you only talk to the decision maker, the buyer might kill the deal later because some technical requirement wasn't met, right?
Right, the extrinsic stuff.
Or if you only talk to the buyer, the executive might nix it because the strategic vision, the intrinsic value, wasn't compelling enough. Multi-threading forces you to address all those potential objections at every level.
So when they have those internal meetings, that 22% of their time, you have allies in the room.
That's the core idea. You have someone who gets the strategy, someone who trusts the process you followed, maybe someone who sees the user benefits. You're not just relying on one person to make your case.
You're giving ammo to multiple people to fight for you across the whole committee.
Precisely. It's like diversifying your investment portfolio, but for your sales pipeline. But wait, it gets even better. The data reveals another massive booster you can combine with this.
Okay. What's that?
Leveraging previous relationships.
Yeah.
Specifically, previous champions.
You mean tracking people who used and liked your product at their old company and then engaging them when they land at a new target account?
That's exactly it. When you bring a previous champion into a new deal, someone who already knows and trusts your solution from past experience, the impact is just stunning.
Okay, let's hear the numbers on that. This sounds crucial for efficiency.
It really is. Adding these previous champions to your new deals leads to 114% higher win rates.
Whoa, double the win rate.
Double. Plus 54% larger deals, and the sales cycles close 12% faster. Think about it.
Yeah.
That person walks into their new company already understanding your value. They bring built-in trust.
They don't need as much of that precious 17% engagement time just to figure out who you are.
Exactly. They can hit the ground running, advocating for you. It's the power of portable trust.
So if multi-threading is the best standalone strategy and adding previous champions gives this huge boost, what happens when you combine them?
That's the ultimate play. The analysis showed that combining multi-threading with leveraging previous champions results in a 63% higher overall win rate compared to just relying on a single point of contact or strategy.
63% higher.
The data couldn't be clearer. Spreading your influence wide within the current deal and strategically leveraging past successes and relationships. That's the most effective, most efficient path forward based on the evidence.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. Hopefully this gives everyone listening some really concrete, data-backed ways to focus their energy where it counts most. Before we wrap up, let's quickly crystallize the top 3 takeaways from this deep dive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Takeaway number 1, never forget that extreme time pressure. You're sharing just 17% of the buyer's journey time with all your competitors. Every single touch point has to count. It needs to be hyper-relevant to whoever you're talking to, whether they care about extrinsic details or intrinsic outcomes.
Takeaway 2, accept that B2B buying is almost always a team sport. That average of 5.4 members is real. You have to identify and appeal to the different roles, the buyer worrying about process, the decision maker focused on strategy, your champions driving internal support. You need a plan for each.
And takeaway number 3, the big one. The data points directly to multi-threading as the highest ROI strategy. That 5x win rate isn't an accident. It comes from strategically managing complexity and mitigating those hidden veto risks. You need to build processes to spread that influence and deliberately track and leverage those previous champions.
That's the bottom line. So the question for you listening right now is, given this clear evidence about multi-threading and previous champions, what's one concrete step you'll take this quarter to put this into practice?
Yeah, will you commit to mapping out, say, 3 key contacts per deal instead of just one? Or maybe set up a process using LinkedIn or your CRM to actually track when your past champions move to new target accounts.
That decision, that action, could really change your results. Focus on what the data shows works.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope this gives you an edge in capturing that crucial 17% of your buyer's attention. We'll see you next time.